The movie begins as we see Frank and his family at an event when suddenly his father is called up to give a speech, which he does with style, and everybody applauds. It's the next day, and Frank's father wakes him up because he needs Frank to accompany him to the bank and act as his driver. We also find out that his father is a con man who has created a method of taking loans from banks with different identities and never paying back. After much persuasion, he is lent another loan. The family downsized from a large, luxurious house to a modest apartment to stay out of the FBI radar because his father believes such a house draws suspicion. Still, his father held on to appearances, dressing well and staying hopeful. On Frank's 16th birthday, he gave his son a bank account with just $25, a heartwarming gesture. Forced to leave private school, Frank transferred to a public one. On his first day, he was bullied by students. But when he noticed that the class was waiting for a substitute French teacher, he acted quickly. Taking advantage of his fluency in the language, which he learned from his mother, who was French, he introduced himself as the teacher. He even humiliated the bully from earlier by bringing him up in front of everyone. When the actual substitute showed up, Frank remained calm, claiming the role was his. He assigned homework and even scheduled a field trip to France. Eventually, the school discovered the truth. His mother didn't seem too bothered, but his father found it amusing, laughing at his son's boldness in the art of deception. As their financial situation declined further, Frank noticed something that shook him. His mother had begun an affair with one of his father's friends. Though hurt, he kept it to himself, hoping to protect their marriage. But it didn't last for long. His parents divorced, and Frank was asked to choose which one to live with. Feeling pressured, instead, he took his bank book and ran away. On his own, he quickly ran out of money and found himself without shelter. Yet, he held on to the con artist mindset and deception. Refusing to give up, he altered his identity and tried several tricks to access funds from banks. But each attempt failed, leaving him frustrated and alone. However, Frank's next idea takes shape when he notices an airline pilot surrounded by admiring flight attendants. The image sparks a plan. He writes to his father, claiming he is training to become a pilot. But in truth, he turns to deception. Presenting himself as a student journalist, he visits Pan American Airways and interviews a senior captain. The pilot, unaware of Frank's motive, explains every detail of the job. Frank learns that a uniform, an airline badge, and a pilot's license open almost any door. When he asked to take a photocopy of the captain's recently expired license for his article, the pilot hands it over without hesitation. With that license in hand, Frank calls the airline supply office, reports a lost uniform, and requests a replacement. Quoting the employee number printed on the license, he charges the new outfit to the company account and walks out in a perfectly tailored Pan American Airlines suit. Dressed as a captain, he visits a bank. The teller accepts his forged check without question, and Frank realizes that payroll checks for flight crews carry even more credibility. Using toy airplane stickers for logos, he begins printing a steady stream of counterfeit paychecks. Each visit to a teller follows the same pattern. While the check is inspected, Frank chats pleasantly, steering attention away from the ink drying on the paper. The ruse works again and again. Soon, he operates like a one-man factory, moving from city to city, cashing larger amounts, and even buying a check verification machine to add another layer of authenticity. Meanwhile, FBI agent Carl Hanratty notices a trail of identical forgeries scattered across the country and launches an investigation. During this period, Frank invites his father to an upscale restaurant, still dressed as a pilot. Hoping to reunite his parents, he presents his father with a new Cadillac meant to impress Frank's mother. Stern and strict, his father refuses, stating that such items could draw attention from the FBI. The next morning, Carl tracks the counterfeit trail to Frank's apartment. Inside, he finds printing plates and stacks of blank checks. Frank steps from the bathroom, calmly claims to be a Secret Service agent, and scolds Carl for arriving late. He hands over a wallet as proof and points outside to a man who appears restrained, actually a passerby, holding hand with a companion. Carl waits while Frank carries the evidence to his car and drives away. Only afterward does Carl inspect the wallet and discover it is filled with scrap paper. Furious, he vows to capture Frank, no matter how long it takes. Frank's exploits soon make headlines, and the press dubs him the James Bond of the sky. He loves the nickname, buys a sleek sports car, and starts dressing like James Bond and spends nights with supermodels. One night, when a model asks for $1,000, he hands her a $1,400 check, pockets the change, and enjoys the company. Talk about living the dream. Meanwhile, Carl is at a coffee shop when a young waiter asks if he's a comic book fan. He is puzzled. A breakthrough comes when Carl notices that one of Frank's fake names, Barry Allen, matches the civilian name of the comic book hero, The Flash. Realizing the culprit is likely a teenager rather than a seasoned criminal, he revisits missing person reports and locates Frank's mother. Photographs confirm the match. When Carl explains that her son has stolen more than $1.3 million, she's left in stunned silence. Meanwhile, young millionaire Frank is living the dream, hosting lively parties in a rented mansion. When a guest gets hurt, he follows the ambulance to the hospital and meets Brenda, a nurse who's just been scolded for a minor mistake. The honesty and vulnerability catch Frank's attention. Trying to be smooth, he pretends to be a doctor to cheer her up. Looks like Johnny-son's got his career ideas from Frank, apparently. Later, he even writes his dad about meeting a girl he wants to marry. To support the lie, Frank forges a Harvard Medical School certificate and returns to the hospital as Brenda's new supervisor. In reality, he learns procedures from medical dramas, repeating film dialogue while guiding residents through rounds. The staff, impressed by his confidence, never suspects the truth. Wait, please don't skip. Please subscribe so I can get monetized and make enough money to go to college and buy a laptop for editing my videos, because editing on an Android isn't easy. While Frank deepens the deception, Carl visits Frank's father, hoping for a lead. The elder Abagnale offers a false trail, suggesting Frank enlisted under fake papers and shipped out to Vietnam. Carl spots a recent letter instead and discovers an address that points straight to Frank's current residence and workplace. By the time agents arrive, Frank is already gone. Frank and Brenda grow close, and she invites him home to meet her parents. Aware that her father is an attorney, Frank claims he plans to leave medicine and pursue law. The older man remains wary yet fascinated. Determined not to disappoint Brenda's family, Frank studies state bar material for 2 weeks in secret and, through relentless effort, passes the exam. I don't even know how that is possible. Soon he works as an assistant prosecutor, further cementing the illusion. The warmth of Brenda's household reminds Frank of life before his parents separated. Hoping to rebuild what was lost, he urges his father to reunite the family. Instead, he learns that his mother has remarried, a revelation that leaves him shaken. Feeling cornered by guilt and longing for peace, Frank calls Carl and pleads for the chase to end, saying he just wants to live quietly as he's about to get married. Carl refuses, reminding him that his crimes have now exceeded $1 million. After the call, the FBI combs through wedding announcements. In a cruel twist, Frank's honesty becomes his own undoing. On the day of the wedding, agents close in. Spotting them, Frank gathers cash, tells Brenda the truth, and admits he's only 17, not the experienced man she believed. He confesses his love and says he wants to be with her. But with no other choice, he asks her to meet him alone at the airport in 2 days, then slips away before Carl reaches the room. When the day comes, Frank sees Brenda arrive, secretly followed by FBI agents. Heartbroken, he quietly slips away and quietly enters the airport to catch the next flight. Surrounded by a group of excited candidates, he makes his way towards his flight. The agent's attention shifts to the women, allowing Frank to move unnoticed. Carl, anticipating a pilot disguise, intercepts a uniformed decoy Frank paid to wait outside. By the time Carl realizes the mistake, Frank is airborne once more. 7 quiet months pass. Frank's counterfeits evolve from simple limitations to near-perfect replicas printed on genuine security stock. The fraud now spans multiple countries, straining banks and law enforcement agencies on 3 continents. Although Carl has no formal authority overseas, he studies one recovered check alone and traces the specialized paper to a handful of European printing firms. France tops the list, and Frank's family connection points the way. With help from local police, Carl tracks Frank to a small workshop in Montreuil, where he finally arrests him because French banks are among those he robbed. Frank faces trial there first. Carl works tirelessly to bring him home, fearing the French sentence will outlast the young man's strength. At last, transfer is approved. During the flight to the United States, Frank cooperates, trusting Carl's promise that he may call his father on arrival. The moment the wheels touch down, the news breaks him. His father has died in a roadside accident. Grief overrides caution. Frank slips past the escorts, drops from the rolling aircraft, and makes straight for his mother's suburban house. Through a window, he sees her new husband and a daughter, a quiet reminder that the past won't return. Moments later, police cars arrive. Frank surrenders without resistance. He receives a 12-year sentence in a maximum security prison. Time passes. Each Christmas, Carl visits, the only guest across the barred threshold. On one visit, he shares an unfamiliar check from a fresh investigation. Frank studies the faint texture and misarranged digits, then explains it was printed by a careless bank teller. Recognizing talent the FBI cannot teach, Carl arranges for Frank to analyze forgeries under supervision. The prison gate opens. The desk inside FBI headquarters replaces the cell. Months of office routine feel stifling, and Frank briefly disappears. Carl tracks him down, but simply asks him to report back on Monday. When the work week begins, Frank walks through the door on time, aware that real freedom lies in earned trust. Reassured, Carl finally asks the question that lingered for years. How did a teenage imposter pass the state bar exam? And that's the same question I would also ask, because it's either the kid has a high IQ or the examiner is straight up dumb. Frank answers plainly. He studied, took the test, and passed. In the years that follow, Frank designs secure checks and advises banks worldwide, earning